I can still picture that day as if it were yesterday, the sunlight cascading through the tall trees lining Redwood Boulevard, casting flickering shadows against the rough pavement. It was mid-April, a time where everything seemed alive, the promise of spring hanging in the air like a sweet perfume. My name is Marcus Thorne, and I was 53 years old, though that particular morning I felt much younger. I was on my way to meet my childhood friend Harold, at the coffee shop I always favored. A simple routine, yet it was one filled with moments that had stitched the fabric of my life together. As I approached the small shop, the faint aroma of freshly ground coffee beans wafted through the open door, mingling with the sound of light chatter and the barista's cheerful greetings. I could hear the soft clinking of mugs and the gentle hiss of the espresso machine, accompanied by the light jazz playing in the background. The bell above the door jingled as I stepped inside, the heat enveloping me like a warm embrace. "Marcus, over here," Harold called, waving from a corner table. His face was framed by a mop of curly hair graying at the edges, but his eyes still sparkled with the mischief of our youth. I couldn't help but grin, feeling that familiar rush of camaraderie that had been built through years of shared memories. "Hey, old man," I replied, sliding into the chair opposite him. The cushion squeaked slightly under my weight, a little too familiar for my liking. "You still drinking that terrible berry blend?" Harold chuckled, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "Berry blend is good for the soul, my friend. Besides, they have that peach scone you love." I rolled my eyes playfully. "You just want me to keep buying scones for you. You're shameless, you know that." The smile stayed on my face as I signaled to the barista, requesting my usual black coffee and 2 scones, one for me and one for Harold as a peace offering. Harold looked around, his expression shifting slightly from playful to serious. "So how's life treating you? Still at the hardware store?" "Yeah, I've been there for almost 20 years now. Can you believe it? Feels like a second home, honestly," I said, taking a sip of my coffee, savoring the rich bitterness that tingled in my mouth. "And how about your insurance gig? Killing it, I hope." He grinned. "You could say that. Just closed a big deal last week." "But you know, the real thrill is in the chase, not just the deals." His eyes glinted, and there was a shadow in his voice that made me pause. What was he not saying? I felt the air shift around the table as if the world outside had paused to listen. "You look like you have something on your mind. Spill it," I urged, leaning in. Harold's fingers drummed on the table, a sign of nervous energy I recognized well. "You know, I've been thinking about those old days, the dreams we had, Marcus. When we thought we could take on the world. Yeah, when we rehearsed our grand speeches about not settling for mediocrity." I chuckled softly, but my mind wandered back to those fervent discussions over cheap beer and cheap pizza, full of hope and dreams of becoming someone important. "We had passion, though," he said quietly, his expression tightening. "Dreams give way to disappointments, and I wonder if we've played it too safe. Sometimes I wish I could rewind the clock." A pang of unease settled in my stomach. "Are you unhappy, Harold?" "Not unhappy, just discontent perhaps," he sighed heavily. "The truth is, I've been poking around some old business venture. You remember that real estate idea we talked about?" "Of course, how could I forget? You mean all those jokes about flipping houses?" "Right, well, I am seriously considering it. There's this piece of property that came available, a gorgeous old building downtown. The potential is off the charts," he said, his enthusiasm breaching the surface. I sensed a shift in the conversation, and a part of me wanted to rally behind him. "You should go for it. You always had an eye for opportunity." "Thanks," but he hesitated, his bright demeanor dimming. "It's just that the last time I took a risk, everything crumbled. I lost my savings on that proposal back in 2009. The market crashed and I was left with nothing. I'm terrified of going through that again." My heart ached for him. "Everyone fails sometimes, Harold. But it's the people who get back up that matter. Look at us sitting here today." My voice was more optimistic than I felt. "Easy for you to say you're still standing." His tone brightened just a tad, teasing my hopeful perspective. "What about you? What dreams did you let go of?" "Geez, buddy, hit me where it hurts, why don't you?" I laughed, my stomach twisting. I had silenced those dreams long ago. "Come on, we used to talk about our plans all night. There's got to be something in your heart that wants to breathe." I stared into my coffee, the darkness matching the weight of my thoughts. I had aspirations, sure, but they slipped away like sand through my fingers. I guess life has a way of doing that. "You deserve more than just an ordinary life, Marcus. We both do. Just because we failed to grab those dreams when we could doesn't mean they're gone forever." He was passionate, begging me to see the light he was so eager to ignite within me. Maybe. Word felt heavy on my tongue as I avoided his gaze, looking instead at the bustling shop around us, the clamor of laughter soothing and grounding me. The familiar walls echoed with the memories we shared within their confines, our laughter, our struggles, the warmth of friendship braided through all our moments. Harold leaned closer, emboldened by the coffee and the camaraderie. "Listen, I found out something. It's about that property I mentioned. The owner, let's say he's not the best guy around." "What do you mean?" "He's wrapped up in some shady business, a developer who's left a wake of broken dreams behind him. They say he's ruthless and he treats people like they're disposable, like they don't matter." My thoughts raced, a flicker of anger igniting in my chest. "That's awful. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I think we have a chance to take control of the narrative. We can bring him down, Marcus." "Are you serious?" I laughed, though the laugh didn't sit quite right and died in my throat as I registered the glint in his eyes. "You want to take down a developer? Do you have a plan, or are you just—" "I have ideas. I've been doing my homework. This could be our shot, our chance to make a mark, to not only reclaim our dreams but maybe even do some good along the way." I leaned back, eliciting a sigh mixed with disbelief and intrigue. "Harold, what you're speaking about is dangerous. Dangerous and exciting." Don't you feel it in your bones? I shook my head slowly. It sounds reckless. What if it blows up in our faces? Sometimes the fire that binds us is the same fire that destroys us. I'd rather face a blaze than sit idly by. There it was, that fervor igniting his features, and for a moment I felt the tug of forgotten dreams pulling at my heart. What do you need from me? Let me show you the property, get a feel for it. I think you might change your mind. His head leaned closer, eyes brightening with hope like a spark tucked in a dark corner waiting to set the world alight. I paused, feeling the weight of his words, the quiet challenge in the air settling between us like a living thing. Fine, I will meet you there, but this better not be another harebrained idea like your last investment. Harold grinned, the warmth of excitement capturing the room in a tight circle of belief. Trust me, this time is different. As we finished our coffee, I couldn't shake the feeling that life was drawing a line in the sand, daring me to step over and reclaim something I had long since buried under layers of complacency. The window beside us held the view of a world I had long been shy to approach, but the promise of a fight was igniting something deep within. Dreams had a way of transcending time. Perhaps it was not too late for me to hold out my hand and wrestle with my past. Stepping out into the brightness outside felt different. There was an edge sparking with electricity in the air. The sun no longer seemed just an illuminating orb, it felt like an urging force, pushing me toward that place I hoped would bring opportunity or perhaps devastation. The world was waiting, and I was on the cusp of something testing the very foundation of who I was. Little did I know, just days later, everything would hit me like a truck, and the fight I had initially envisioned would take on a height of intensity I could scarcely imagine. But all of that was still ahead. For that morning I was filled with a hopeful pulse, holding tight to a future I dared to believe in. Once more I stood in my kitchen, the smell of burnt toast filling the air, mingling with the faint scent of fresh coffee. My hands trembled slightly as I struggled to pour a cup. It was a light roast which had become something of a ritual for me every morning, a small pleasure amid the chaos of my life. I glanced at the clock above the stove, the fluorescent numbers glowing an ominous red, 7:15. I could hear the faint sounds of traffic outside, the chirp of birds greeting the morning, but all I could focus on was the weight in my chest. The betrayal still stung like a fresh wound, and I had been applying pressure to it all night, hoping the pain would somehow dull, but it persisted. "Marcus, you better hurry up, we're going to be late." My sister Liz's voice echoed from the living room, cutting through my thoughts. She had come to stay with me after my life turned upside down, a comforting presence and an anchor for my spiraling mind. But sometimes I wondered if I was just burying my head in the sand, avoiding what needed to be faced. "Just a minute," I shouted back, trying to keep my voice steady. I grabbed the toast off the counter, which had turned a dark charcoal black, and managed to scrape the blackened bits off with a knife. As I did, memories fluttered into my mind like a swarm of moths drawn to a light, leading me back to the day when everything changed. It was a Tuesday like any other. I remember walking into the office, the air perfumed with that stale mix of coffee and printer ink that I had grown accustomed to over the years. We were going through budgets, numbers swirling on the screen like a chaotic ballet. My colleague Greg was already at his desk, his head bowed over a report, fingers tapping furiously against the keyboard. I could tell he was deep in concentration, but that didn't stop me from rolling my eyes. Greg always fought for the lion's share of attention in meetings, hoping it would elevate his status, boost his ego. "Hey Marcus," he called over his shoulder without looking back. "Have you seen the revised figures?" "Not yet," I said, shrugging. "I'll get there as soon as I finish with these outdated charts." I wasn't fooling myself, the outdated charts had been my life's work, remnants from when I still believed in the company. It was hard to believe I had once been excited about presenting them, back when we had all still felt like a team. "And you thought you could challenge me?" His voice dripped with arrogance. Had he always been this way? He spun around, that spiky hair and white-collar shirt making him look like a self-made villain from a bad action movie. "Your old charts are like old news, Marcus. Honestly, you should know better than to hold on to things that are clearly obsolete." "Greg, everyone's charts are part of our collective memory," I shot back, heat rising in my cheeks. The office was buzzing, but all I could focus on was the way Greg's eyes flicked to the clock, dismissing me like an annoying gnat. "You don't throw out history just because it doesn't fit your new narrative," he chuckled, spinning back to his screen. I could feel my fists clenching at my side, a simmering rage bubbling up as I paced back to my desk. This was one of many such encounters with him. The way he dismissed me, belittled me, as if I was a relic from an era that should have been forgotten. But now, looking back, I realized Greg had been my foremost tormentor. Seemingly insignificant moments that piled up became a mountain of hurt, leading to the defining moment that transformed my life. "Are you going to eat that toast or just stare at it?" Liz interrupted my reverie, snapping me back to the present. She stood there, arms crossed, a disapproving look on her face. "You have that meeting with Mr. Bloom in 30 minutes. Yeah, I know," I muttered, setting the plate down on the table, my stomach twisted. I could already feel the anxiety creeping in, a familiar companion. This is stupid, Liz. Why do I have to sit through this?" "Because it matters. You made a commitment, remember?" She walked over, pushing her dark hair behind her ear. "You have to show up, face him. What's the point?" I felt myself growl, the sharpness of my words surprising even myself. He, along with Greg, turned my entire career into a circus. I'm not going to sit there and pretend it doesn't hurt. They've robbed me of my dignity. Liz's expression softened and she stepped closer, placing a hand on my arm. I get that it hurts, but you need to take the power back. Going there, facing them, it's a step. Think of it as part of your plan. I stared down at the chipped counter. The remains of my breakfast seemed to symbolize everything wrong in my life, burnt and unusable. A plan for what? They took everything from me. I watched them destroy my ideas, my work, my credence, all for what? A promotion for Greg and a fat paycheck for Mr. Bloom. What about me, Marcus? I know it feels like they left you in the dust, but you can't let their actions decide who you are. Remember who you were before this mess. You were strong, you had vision, she urged. They may think they have the upper hand, but they are wrong. You can be so much more than the sum of their betrayal. Her words hung in the air, and I could feel a flicker of something deep inside me, a glimmer of hope struggling to break free, but I was still raw, still bleeding from the wounds they had inflicted. I don't know, Liz. What if they mock me? What if they try to belittle me again? I can't handle that. Liz pursed her lips, her blue eyes sparkling with determination. Then you rise above it, take those jabs, and instead of letting them cut, use them as fuel. Show them they have underestimated you. You are not the weak man they want you to be. You are Marcus Thorne. You can change the narrative. With a heavy heart I nodded, but doubt hung over me like a rain cloud, my chest constricted with nerves. Okay, I'll try, but only because I don't want to disappoint you. She smiled, squeezing my arm before stepping back. Good, I know you can do this. Now put on that brave face and get going. You can have your revenge later. Her words struck a chord within me. Revenge. It was a spark that ignited a long-buried fire, and as I took a breath, I wondered if maybe I could plot some future retaliation. The mere thought of Greg's smug face twisted with confusion gave me a sense of satisfaction. Maybe you're right. Maybe I have something I can say in that meeting after all. Exactly, Liz beamed, her enthusiasm infusing me with a new energy. Now go, show them who's boss. Something deep in my gut urged me on as I quickly rinsed my plate and grabbed my messenger bag. The crisp morning air hit me like a slap as I stepped outside, a brisk reminder of reality. I scanned the street for my car, each step weighing heavier than the last, thoughts swirling in my head like autumn leaves caught in a downward spiral. Suddenly, my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a text from Greg. Can we discuss your proposal before the meeting? Need to make sure you have your facts straight. The audacity. I could almost hear the smirk in his message. I paused for a split second, then typed back. I'll see you in the meeting, Greg. There, point made. I wouldn't surrender the brief sense of control I felt by letting him dictate my time. I walked faster, determination lighting a fire under my feet. As I maneuvered through traffic, I focused on each milestone of the journey. The park where I used to jog with friends, the bakery that used to fill my mornings with warmth, the diner where I met Liz for late-night talks. These places once brought joy. Now they felt like ghosts of a time that swirled around my heart with confusion and sorrow. Pulling into the parking lot, I felt my palms grow clammy as I parked. My reflection in the rearview mirror was a stranger's face staring back, disheveled hair, weary eyes, lines of worry etched deeply on my brow. Get it together, Marcus, I muttered under my breath. This was about more than just me. It was about reclaiming the space I had been forced to cede. It was about standing tall once more. As I entered the building, the sterile white walls loomed ominously, and I could hear the chatter from the conference room echoing through the air, laughing and casual. Were they discussing my failures, plans for the future? I walked down the hallway, the clicking of my shoes echoing with each step as I steeled my resolve. Inside the conference room, the atmosphere was thick with tension and anticipation. But I was ready. I stepped in, my heart racing, and the conversations fell silent, faces turning to me one by one. Greg smirked, and Mr. Bloom looked up from his notes with an expression that betrayed nothing. Ah, Marcus. Good of you to join us, Mr. Bloom said smoothly, his polished voice cutting through the silence like a knife. I hope you have something worthwhile to share. Actually, I do, I replied, surprising even myself with the steadiness of my tone. A curious hush crept in as I motioned to the projector screen. We need to talk about the direction this company is heading. Greg raised an eyebrow, dismissing me as though I were a bothersome fly buzzing around his head. Let's not pretend your suggestions hold substantial weight, Marcus, he sneered, his bravado spilling out like a broken dam. I took a deep breath, feeling Liz's words seep into my chest, fortifying my spirit. Actually, this discussion is important. We need innovation, not this endless cycle of stagnation. Interesting, Mr. Bloom interjected, folding his arms across his chest as he leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowed. Please share your insights, we're all ears. The air was electric, and I could feel the tension in the room mounting as I continued. If we don't adapt to the changes in our market, we risk losing everything, I said, my voice gaining strength. One step at a time, I could feel the tides shifting. This was only the beginning of recapturing who I was. Just how do you think we can make that happen? Greg challenged, leaning into his arrogance like a shield. By remembering our roots, our values, I replied, motioning to the screen showing data illustrating past successes. These weren't just outdated charts, they were the foundation. And we must rebuild upon that here. I could see Greg start to falter as I laid out my arguments. The surprise in the room was palpable. Perhaps Liz was right, maybe I could turn this tide, maybe revenge would look like not giving up on myself. I stood taller, confronting my fears and turning my pain into power. So, tell me more, Mr. Bloom said quietly, the tiniest shred of respect creeping into his voice. I took it as an opportunity, knowing that each word I spoke was one step further away from the shadows of betrayal toward reclaiming my life. Let's work together, let's rebuild this company but also each other. With each argument, I could feel my conviction dancing like a flame in a dark room. I was ready to confront Greg and Mr. Bloom, to show them that their efforts to destroy me had only made me stronger. As I stepped through their traps of mockery and bravado, I could see it unfold before me, a new beginning. The scales of justice were finally tilting, and the fire of vengeance ignited deep within me, promising that this wouldn't end with words alone. This was just the beginning of my journey, reclaiming my space, reclaiming Marcus Thorne. The sun dropped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement of my childhood neighborhood. What was once vibrant and lively now lay draped in decay, mirroring the bitterness I had fed for far too long. Silver Spring had changed, but the haunting memories still clung to me like a bitter aftertaste. Each corner I turned whispered tales of the past, and now I was ready to rewrite those tales into something dark and satisfying. Marcus, are you ready for tonight? Alana's voice broke through my thoughts as we stood in the kitchen of my old family home, now a place I barely recognized. She stood there, hands on her hips, the way she always did when she had a point to make. Her fiery red hair framed her determined expression, the fierce spirit I admired and envied. Alana had become my fierce ally in this hunt for revenge, a needed spark in this plan I had hatched. I glanced down at my reflection in the stainless steel oven door, eyes wild with determination, hair peppered with gray, and an expression steeled toward the past and what I needed to accomplish. Yeah, I'm ready. Just trying to gather my thoughts, I replied, forcing myself to sound collected, even though inside I felt as if I were standing at the edge of a great chasm. Alana straightened up, tilting her head as if she could read my mind. You know, getting revenge is a slippery slope, Marcus. You're sure you want to go down this road? The concern in her voice melted a layer of my resolve. Alana, I said, trying to keep my voice steady and low, do you have any idea what they did to me, to us? I can't just let that slide, it's been too long. I turned away, staring out the kitchen window at the neighboring houses where life had moved on while my heart was stuck in a loop of pain and anger. Trust me, I continued, I have to do this, it's the only thing that keeps me going, she sighed, crossing her arms. I get that, but just think about the consequences, we're messing with some dangerous people. A shiver ran down my spine at her words. I knew deep down the kind of people I was about to mess with. The Thorne family was not just connected, they were a mess of power and manipulation that made my skin crawl. Her concern was genuine, and for the first time in a long time I appreciated having someone who cared enough to challenge me. I will think about it, I muttered, though I fully intended to ignore her advice. We rummaged through old, dusty boxes, searching for anything that could aid in my vendetta. It was like looking for buried treasure, but instead of gold and jewels we found remnants of the life I had left behind. Love letters, school trophies, and countless photographs capturing moments that felt like somebody else's life. Alana picked up an old photograph of me and Rachel when we were teenagers, leaning against a car, bright smiles plastered on our faces, dreams swirling like the clouds above. Look at you two, you were inseparable. A lump formed in my throat at the mention of her name. That was before everything fell apart, before they took her away from me. Just thinking about Rachel drove a dagger through my heart. One moment we were lost in each other's eyes, and the next she had slipped through my fingers, just like the trust I used to have in the world. Hey, what about this? Alana suddenly exclaimed, snapping me out of my thoughts as she fished out a metal box from under a pile of old blankets. She wiped away the dust with the back of her hand, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Let's see what treasures we have in here. I leaned in closer, watching her fumble with the rusty latch until it finally clicked open. Inside were various tools that belonged to my father, screwdrivers, wrenches, a rusted hammer, tools long forgotten yet seemingly filled with memories. My father had always worried about the world around him. He believed every door should be closed and locked, that every window should be barred. But now those lessons felt lost in the winds of time, just like Rachel. Alana lifted out a wrenched hammer, and a grin crept across her face like an artist revealing a masterpiece. This could come in handy, she teased, swinging it through the air as if she were ready to take on an army. Funny you mention that, I mumbled, though the weight of sarcasm hung heavy on my mind. I wasn't laughing. I'm not planning on using it for construction. Just make sure you don't end up in jail, I can't bail you out. Her playful tone starkly contrasted with the dark seriousness I felt swirling around me. My heart raced as I thought about the night ahead, the plan that had been swirling in my mind like a storm. Alana, I need your help tonight. I'll need someone I can trust by my side. She stopped twirling the hammer, her expression shifting to one of earnestness. You know I've got your back, but promise me you'll be careful. You're not the only one who can get hurt here. Revenge has a way of kicking back harder than we expect. I clenched my fists, feeling the frustration bubble up inside me, but I held it in check. Trust me, I'm not going in without a plan. I know the Thorne family too well. My breath quickened at the thought of Marcus Thorne, the man I had once considered a friend. Although we had parted ways years ago, venomous resentment had replaced that friendship. They think just because they are bigger than me, they can squash me down like a bug, I spat, eyes narrowed in fierce determination. Alana's eyes softened. I only want to make sure you come out of this alive. The wind howled outside, rattling the old house and bouncing off the windows. It felt like nature herself was echoing my turmoil. I will, I assured her, pushing past the paranoia nibbling at my thoughts. I have to be the one they don't see coming. She nodded, but I could see the doubt lurking in her eyes. I tried to shake off my own unease. This had to happen. After years of suffering, I would finally confront the ghosts, the Thorne family who tore my life apart. Their party tonight was set to be the thing that drags them all together, a celebration for the head of the family's birthday, and it was the perfect opportunity for me to slip in unnoticed. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I could feel the tension in the air thickening around us. Let's go over the plan one more time. I want to be absolutely prepared. Alana looked serious, her chin jutting out defiantly. Okay, but we assume nobody knows you will be there. We go in unnoticed, right? Exactly. Get in, get what I need, and get out. No direct confrontation, not yet. We can't tip our hand too soon. I paced back and forth, measuring my words. I need that evidence to rattle them, to show them I have not forgot. Evening sky turned a deep purple as I gathered the tools, feeling like a soldier preparing for battle. Alana kept stealing glances at the door as if any moment someone might burst in with the bad news that my plans were foolish. I couldn't blame her for worrying, even I felt that tugging anxiety. Tonight is my night, I declared, partly to convince myself. She nodded, her demeanor shifting back to determination. Then we go full steam ahead. What's our first step? First, we get into the party. I pulled out my old suit jacket from a nearby pile, dusting it off. Its fabric crinkled, but it felt like a shield wrapping me in a cocoon of false confidence. I'll need to look the part. Alana laughed lightly, the sound breaking the tension in the room. You always were quite the charmer, just try not to actually charm anyone. There was a knowing glint in her eyes that made me chuckle despite myself. Charming is not the goal tonight, I replied with a smirk, imagining the shocked expressions on the Thorne family's faces when they finally realized I was there. I looked at her, my resolve deepening. Tonight it's not about charm, it's about justice. Stepping into the night felt like crossing into a different realm, leaving behind the remnants of the past that clung to the house. The streets were eerily quiet, every sound amplified in the still air. Lana's car crunched over gravel as we pulled into the Thorne estate, a mansion glowing like a beacon of wealth. It reeked of privilege, like a shiny facade hiding the rot within. Are you ready? Alana's voice broke through my reverie as we parked a distance away from the throng of cars. Ready as I'll ever be. I pushed the door open, my heart racing as I scanned the area, people bustling around, laughter laced with champagne bubbles rising like promises in the air. Let's do this. Alana squeezed my shoulder lightly for reassurance before stepping out with purpose, her fiery hair catching the evening light as she pulled me out into the whirlwind of festivities before us. Stick close to me, keep your eyes open, and don't get lost in the crowd, I instructed as we approached the entrance, hyped with adrenaline that buzzed just beneath the surface. Life surged around us like an orchestra finely tuned to revelry, but my heart beat to a different rhythm, one of revenge. I stepped onto the cobblestone path leading up to the grand entrance, and as the heavy doors swung open, my resolve solidified. Tonight I remind them who I am, I whispered to myself as the world of glitz and deception surrounded me. I wore that determination like armor, ready to embrace every challenge, not behind the shadows but right in the light. Time had come to draw the line in the sand, and show them that Marcus Thorne had not just survived years of suffering. He had evolved into something entirely different. I stood at the edge of the overgrown lawn, the cool evening air wrapping around me like a shroud as I stared at Marcus Thorne's imposing figure through the cracked window of his modest, yet well-kept home. The setting sun cast elongated shadows across the ground, darkening the spaces that felt way too familiar and far too burdened with memories. My heart pounded like a war drum in my chest, adrenaline coursing through my veins, almost drowning out the chorus of cicadas that sang their relentless song of summer. There was something both calming and maddening about the small-town hum of Silver Spring, a familiarity that only stirred the old resentments bubbling beneath my surface. I kept replaying everything that had led me to this moment. I was tired of feeling invisible in a world that had turned its back on me. Was this really the path I wanted? I took a deep breath, tasted the sweet and smoky scent of barbecue wafting from a nearby yard, mixed with the earthy notes of grass and soil. It grounded me, tied me to reality for a second, but my focus snapped back to the task at hand. As I set my jaw, gripping the cold metal of the key in my pocket, I felt surrounded by darkness so deep it threatened to swallow me whole. What was left to lose? I glanced down at my worn sneakers, the threads almost as frayed as my nerves, and I made the decision. It was time to face him. A soft rustling disturbed the stillness as I stepped closer to the porch. The screen door creaked on its hinges, a sound that echoed the unease rippling through me. I knocked, and the dull thud resonated with a weight I couldn't quite fathom. Seconds felt like ages as I stood there, sweat trickling down my back, thoughts racing. What if he didn't answer? What if I lost my nerve? Just as I was considering turning back, the door swung open, revealing Marcus himself, a grizzled veteran of life, his age etched into the deep lines of his face. He looked surprised, eyes narrowing, his expression a cocktail of confusion and annoyance. "Can I help you?" he barked, his gravelly voice cutting through the air like a knife. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. "Marcus Thorne," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We need to talk." His brows furrowed, and for a fleeting moment I saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes before he masked it with indifference. "I don't recall knowing you. You don't have to remember me for this," I said, my heart racing. "You just need to listen." The rasp in his voice turned into a low growl. "You come here to stir up trouble. I have no time for whatever games you're playing." I took a deep breath, a wave of anxiety crashing over me. This was it. I couldn't back down now, not after everything he had put me through. "Games? No, Marcus, this is the end of your games." He shifted slightly, a defensive stance, crossing his arms over his broad chest. It was like he sensed the deadly tremor in the air, the moment teetering on the edge of chaos. You have some nerve showing up here, you do not know who you are dealing with. Oh, but I do, I retorted, stepping forward, driven by a boldness that surprised even me. I remember every lie, every manipulation, every time you stood there smiling while I was shattered inside. You think I forget? The tension crackled between us, and the looming twilight only heightened the drama unfolding. He took a step closer, jaw tightening, eyes flashing with something like disdain. You think you can intimidate me? Pathetic. I could feel anger boiling in the pit of my stomach like a volcano ready to erupt. You think you can walk away from what you've done? You ruined lives, Marcus. My life, and for what? A fleeting grin, a moment's satisfaction. Get off my porch, he hissed, venom lacing his words. You have no right to stand here throwing accusations. No right, no, you don't get to twist this, not anymore. I lifted my chin defiantly, refusing to back down. You came into my life like a storm and left it in ruins. You think I care about your sob story? The glare he shot me was like ice slicing through the simmering heat of my rage. Look around, kid. Life is tough, we all have to deal with our own problems. You made sure of that, I shot back, memories flooding my mind like a movie reel, the moments he had taken from me, each deceit eating away at my sense of self. You turned happiness into a farce, but I am not here to dig up the past, I'm here to settle it. His laugh was cold, devoid of any warmth, and echoed sharply into the quiet evening. Settle? Oh, please spare me the theatrics. You think this is some kind of high school drama. Every bit of bravado he showed only fueled the fire within me. I stepped forward again, clenching my fists. My vision narrowed and I could hear the blood roaring in my ears. You think I'm joking? You don't know what I've been through. I fell, Marcus, because of you, countless times, and I never got up on my own. I fought, I clawed my way through the wreckage you left behind. I'm here to hold you accountable. Accountable for what? His condescending tone made my skin crawl. For being a man. For pushing you to be better than you were. Better, you took everything from me, my family, my peace of mind. You manipulated me when I was at my lowest. I fell for your lies like they were truth. You didn't care, you never did. For a brief moment, I saw his mask slip, the cracks revealing a hint of the man beneath that tough exterior. But just like that, he composed himself, the subtle flicker of vulnerability snuffed out. This is tiring. If you have a point to make, get to it. You are the point. I stepped back, taking a steadying breath, desperately trying to rein in my emotions. You think you can just brush me away, but I'm still here, and I am not leaving until you understand the pain you caused. You really think you hold that kind of power over me? He snarled. His voice was a roaring thunder, but I refused to be scared. What you did, Marcus, it was unforgivable. You will pay for it. Pay, he bellowed, stepping towards me, trying to intimidate. You're a child playing dress up. Tell me, what do you think you can do? You think showing up here ranting like a madman will do anything? You will find out. I took a bold step closer, meeting his gaze without flinching. You will find out that I am stronger than you thought, and the truth is sharper than any blade. I could feel the air around us grow thick with tension, the energy shifting, thickening like the approaching storm clouds that gathered above us. A sudden stillness enveloped the moment, and an electric charge tingled in the air. Marcus's lips curled into a smirk, a sinister grin that sent chills down my spine. Are you threatening me? He asked, mockery dripping from every word. That is adorable. You can laugh, I shot back, keeping my voice steady, but this is no joke. You are on borrowed time. Oh, please, you are in over your head. I have survived worse than you, and I will outlast whatever silly plan you have. My heart raced, every nerve ending firing as I stared into his unfazed expression, trying to gauge if he truly believed he was invincible. You may think you are untouchable, but every piece of wreckage has its end, Marcus, and I intend to be the one to ensure that happens. I paused, my voice low and steady. This isn't just about me anymore, it's about everyone you've hurt. They deserve to know the truth. For a moment, silence enveloped us, the cicadas' chorus surprisingly distant, almost muted. My breath quickened as Marcus stared at me with an intensity that made every part of me scream to flee. But I stood there unwavering. The winds shifted, the sweet scent of impending rain washing over us like nature's eerie lullaby. You're foolish, he finally said, venom lacing his tone. And you will regret this. Regret? No, Marcus, I'll relish every moment. You think I fear you. Then you are mistaken. The fire that raged within was undeniable now, the weight of years of hurt and betrayal finally spilling over. With every sentence, I chipped away at the fortress he had built around himself. I am done being your puppet. Then go ahead, make your move, he challenged, his bravado unwavering, although I could see a hint of uncertainty creeping into his eyes. You think you know pain? You think you are the only one who bears scars. You don't know anything about me, I spat, fury intertwining with every word. But you will soon. As I spoke, the dark clouds began to swirl above, rumbling with distant thunder that echoed my heartbeat. It felt as if the entire universe was waiting, holding its breath for the impending clash. Until next time, Marcus, I said, my voice steady but laden with promise as I turned on my heel and stepped away. He didn't call after me. I could sense the uncertainty in his posture as I walked away, the power shifting in ways I hadn't anticipated. The evening air was cool against my flushed skin, a stark contrast to the heat of the confrontation. My mind raced, but I hadn't mentally processed everything that had just happened. All I knew for sure was that I had crossed a line and I wouldn't be returning to the shadows. I was ready for battle and I was armed with the truth. As I walked away from his house, the weight of my resolve settled comfortably in my chest. Even as a storm brewed behind me, every dark cloud a reminder that this was just the beginning. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, I stood in front of the ominous glass doors of Hargrave Technologies. It felt like an eternity since I had first walked into this place, a naive underling eager to please. Now, as I stared at the polished steel facade, a wave of nostalgia crashed over me, mixed with anger. This wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and all the time I wasted obeying the whims of Spencer Hargrave. The low hum of traffic became muted as I stepped inside, the cool air conditioning striking a chill to my skin. The lobby was a far cry from the cramped cubicles I remembered. It was vast and opulent, filled with contemporary art that seemed to scream of wealth and power. I had once admired it, marveling at the disparity between the grandeur of the building and the sweat and tears poured into it by the people who worked there. But today I felt nothing but contempt. "Marcus, you're back," Julia, the receptionist, exclaimed. She looked the same, her bright red hair perfectly styled, as though she had just completed a fashion shoot. I had always found her bubbly demeanor a little overwhelming, but she was one of the few warm smiles at Hargrave. I forced a smile back that felt more like a grimace. "I'm here to see Spencer," I said, trying to ignore the way my heart raced at the thought of confronting him. Her brow furrowed slightly. He's not expecting you. You might want to call first." "I don't think that will be necessary. Just let him know I'm here." I kept my tone steady, though inside my insides twisted with anticipation. Julia hesitated but picked up the phone anyway. "Okay, but just a moment." I could tell she was worried about my unexpected visit. She spoke softly into the receiver, and it was as if the seconds stretched on for hours. Finally, she hung up and turned to me, her expression unreadable. "Head on up then, he's in his office. Second floor, first door on the right." "Thanks, Julia." I nodded at her and started my ascent up the polished marble stairs, each step echoing in the hollow space. As I climbed, the memories attacked me relentlessly. I could see the young versions of myself, bright-eyed and determined, fighting to prove my worth amid whispers of condescension. I thought of the long hours I put in, the constant sacrificing of personal life for a man who never appreciated me. Spencer Hargrave was a black hole of greed, and I felt the warmth of my resolve energize me. The hallway on the second floor was lined with impressive photographs, some featuring Spencer with influential figures. My throat tightened at how easily he had mingled among people who saw him as a king. I could feel his kingdom cracking beneath the surface, and I was about to become the earthquake that would bring it all down. I halted at the door marked Office of Spencer Hargrave. The nameplate gleamed under the overhead lights, practically taunting me. A bead of sweat trickled down my side as I knocked firmly. There was a shuffling noise from within, and then a familiar voice called out, "Come in." I opened the door, and there he was, Spencer Hargrave himself. He had aged like fine wine, or at least that was the image he believed he projected. His silver hair shone under the lights, and his tailored suit clung to him like a second skin. He looked up, his eyes narrowing as they landed on me. "Marcus," his tone was puzzled, almost condescending. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here to talk, Spencer," I said, trying to swallow the bitterness that rose in my throat. I stepped into the room, closing the door behind me with a soft click. It was strange to see him look so relaxed in his high-backed leather chair, confident and composed. I had never been in this position before, and yet the power felt intoxicating. "Talk," he scoffed, leaning back in his chair. "You've been gone a while. What makes you think I have time to listen to you?" "Because I've spent too long listening to you," I replied, allowing my voice to rise with passion. "Do you think you can just dismiss people after using them for your own gain? I'm done being a pawn in your game, Spencer." His lips curled into that infuriating smirk I remembered all too well. "You were never a pawn, Marcus. You always had a choice. Don't blame me for your failures." "Failure? You twisted my potential into something rot and made me question my worth, my talent. You are the reason I felt small." The air crackled with tension between us, thickening with my rising anger. Spencer chuckled softly, leaning forward as if I had just entertained him. "This is amusing. You think you can waltz back in here and demand anything after disappearing for years? You were never meant for this world. You were meant to follow orders, not make demands." I took a step closer, firm and unwavering. "That's where you're wrong. I may have followed orders, but I've learned a thing or two in your absence. I know what I want now, Spencer, and I'm not afraid of you." His eyes flared with something. Was it anger, regret? It was hard to tell. "And what do you want, Marcus?" he asked, his demeanor shifting from arrogance to sly curiosity. "I want recognition, not just for me but for everyone you've held down, for every talented individual pushed aside for your personal gain. And if that means we're going to do this the hard way, then so be it." My heart drummed tirelessly against my ribs as I watched his expression shift, confusion washing over his features. "Do you think you can just threaten me?" he challenged, his voice lowering to a low, dangerous growl. "I have half the city in my pocket. You're just one man." "Maybe so, but one man can burn it all down." I stepped back, feeling the surge of confrontation wrap around me like a shield, emboldening me. "And I've had a long time to prepare." For a moment, silence hung heavy between us, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Finally, Spencer broke the tension with a chilling laugh. "What do you think you can do, Marcus? Turn my employees against me? They're loyal to me." "Loyalty is a fickle thing. I wouldn't underestimate people, especially those who feel used and belittled." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the next part. "I've gathered information, evidence of your wrongdoings, and I'm not the only one. You may have power, but I know your weaknesses." "Go on," he said, the interest in his eyes now laced with something more wary. "Think about it. The contracts you signed without disclosing important details. The The projects you took credit for that were never yours to claim. Those overseas ventures that were more than just business, they were scams. I'm not alone in this, Spencer. My voice trembled with a mix of exhilaration and fear. I have allies now, people you've wronged who are ready to fight back. His face paled slightly and I could see the wheels turning in his head. You can't do this, he said, sounding almost desperate. You don't understand what you're playing with. Oh, I understand perfectly, I replied, leaning in as his bravado crumbled. And very soon the board of directors will understand too. I've planted the seeds and all I have to do is let them grow. Marcus, this is a mistake. You don't want to go down this road. What do you hope to accomplish? His voice shifted from taunting to commanding, and I felt a thrill of satisfaction rush through me at the sight of his unease. I want justice, Spencer, but I won't stop there. I will have your position, your power, and your reputation in my hands, and when that day comes, you will finally understand what it feels like to be diminished and ridiculed. Listen, he said, attempting to regain control of the situation, but his voice came out shaky. If you think I'll let you do this, you're sadly mistaken. How do you think it would look to the world if you tarnished my name? You'd be ruining your own chances, too. No, I'll be freeing myself from the chains you placed on me. You think I cared about climbing the corporate ladder under your thumb? I can build my own ladder, and it will be one you'll never be able to touch. My chest swelled as I pushed him, my words striking true, his face flushed with rage. I will make you regret this. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Try me, I shot back, feeling the fire within me glow brighter. Each breath I took filled me with more certainty, more purpose. I refuse to be your overlooked footnote any longer. For a moment, Spencer stared at me, his mask of confidence cracking. I'll bury you, you'll try. But unlike last time, I'll be ready this time. I turned to leave, the power surge still electrifying my veins. Goodbye, Spencer, you won't see me coming. As I stepped out of his office and back into the hallway, the realization washed over me. This was no longer just about revenge. It was about turning the tables and seizing my own future after years of living in the shadow of a tyrant. I glanced back at the door, slowly shutting in the remnants of the man I once feared. With each step away from him, I felt more liberated, more alive. I escaped into the bustling streets of Silver Spring, feeling the energy of the city pulse around me as I walked. Spencer Hargrave would soon learn that I was now an unstoppable force, a man reborn from the ashes of betrayal. I had reached the point of no return, but my heart raced with a mix of fear and excitement. I was ready for this battle. The winds of change had begun to blow, and I was determined to ride them into the future I had long been denied. And nothing would stop me now.